Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty profound, a concept called non-duality. And it's not just about thinking differently.
No, not at all. It really asks you to experience reality in a whole new way.
Exactly. We've got some great source material, looking at things like practice guides, some analysis from the Awakening Collective, and we want to get past just the definition.
Right, because the core idea, while simple, is huge. It's this insight that all the separations we take for granted, me and you, subject and object, the observer and what's observed, they aren't ultimately real.
They're illusory.
In a fundamental sense, yes. Non-duality points towards this single, unbroken, seamless reality, just one field of everything.
Okay, but that sounds, incredibly abstract. I mean, we feel separate, don't we? I know where I end and this microphone begins. You're over there. I'm here.
That's the default programming. Ordinary consciousness, it lives and breathes duality. It puts up these walls, me versus not me, good versus bad, here versus there.
So how do we bridge that gap? That's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To see how that feeling of separation actually starts to dissolve in real life, in perception, through our senses, even our emotions.
Exactly. It's about understanding that non-duality isn't just a cool philosophy. It's the actual experience where you start to see those boundaries, those walls as well, mental habits, provisional constructs.
The traps the mind keeps running.
Right. And as you see that, the tight grip of the separate self, that feeling of me, it starts to soften. It can eventually just dissolve back into the whole picture.
Okay, let's unpack that. If this separation is an illusion the mind keeps alive, how does the mind actually let go? The sources break this down quite nicely into three main ways this unified reality starts showing up.
Yeah, 3 levels of experience.
Let's start with level 1, perceptual non-duality. This is about space and location dissolving. Normally, our default view is the body is here at the center looking out. And the mind's constantly calculating, how far is that? How do I reach for this?
Absolutely. Walking across a room, reaching for a door handle, it all relies on this constant spatial map running in the background.
But the insight here, and this is pretty mind-bending, is that space and time and location aren't fixed realities. They're actually created by thought.
Largely, yes. They're concepts we use to stabilize our world. Think about hearing a dog bark. The thought isn't just bark.
No, it's bark. Over there, left side, maybe 50 feet away, outside. Instant location.
Exactly. And the shift happens when those thoughts, the ones constantly creating the distance, start to quiet down. They dissolve.
The examples in the source material are fascinating here, like someone in the shower suddenly unable to locate where the water sensation is hitting them. It's not on my head or on my back.
It's just sensation happening everywhere and nowhere specific.
Or that classic one of seeing a tree branch, and it feels like it just jumps out, because the mind didn't do its usual pre-calculation of the distance.
Right. It's a failure of the habitual spatial rendering, you could say.
So what does this mean bigger picture? The sources say the solidity of the world wavers.
It does. Because if distance is a mental habit, then the environment isn't as fixed as we assume. It becomes more malleable, like a dream in a way. The objects are there, sure, but their out-there-ness, their fixed location, starts to feel less absolute.
But wait, doesn't that create problems? Like functionally.
Right.
If I stop calculating distance, am I going to start walking into things? It sounds potentially chaotic.
That's a really common concern, and it's crucial. It's not that the ability to judge distance vanishes. You can still drive a car, you can still catch a ball.
Okay.
It's the belief in the absolute objective reality of that distance calculation that fades. You see the calculations as useful tools necessary for functioning, but not as the fundamental truth of reality.
So the experience gets lighter, less rigid.
Exactly. Less weighed down by this fixed idea of here versus there.
Okay, that makes sense. So if space starts getting fluid, maybe the boundaries between our senses do too. Which brings us neatly to level 2, sensory non-duality.
Yes, the merging of the senses.
We're taught, sight is sight, sound is sound, touch is touch, separate channels.
Right. Discrete data streams. But in this shift, those boundaries are also revealed as mental categories. The inputs start to kind of blur together.
But in one flow.
One continuous unified flow of, just experiencing.
And the sources mention sound often leads the way here. Why sound?
Well, sound is perhaps less conceptually loaded than vision for many people. And our modern world is so loud visually and auditorily that our brain filters out a lot of subtle stuff.
Right.
But as attention deepens, you can become aware of this constant underlying vibration or resonance. Some traditions call it the sound current or even the hum of Om.
Is it an actual noise?
Not necessarily like a loud hum you can record. It's more like the background vibrational texture of reality itself, which is usually filtered out.
So if you're sitting in the park, let's say, instead of hearing birds over there and seeing leaves rustle and feeling wind here,
It all starts to become one single thing happening. The sound of the birds, the look of the leaves, the feeling of the wind, they're not separate events processed by separate organs. They're experienced as a single, unified expression.
and the me who is observing is also part of that.
Absolutely. The observer merges into the field of observation. It's not me hearing a bird, it's just birdsong seeing feeling happening
Yeah.
right here. And here is the whole field of awareness, not just located inside the head or body.
Wow. That's a profound shift from just observing something out there.
It really is. It's a lived experience, not an idea. It shows how interconnected our sensory processing actually is beneath the conceptual layers.
Okay, moving on to the third level, and this sounds like it could be the most intense. Emotional non-duality.
Yeah.
Unified energy.
Yes, this one directly challenges our deepest conditioning around feeling.
Where the lines between different emotions just collapse.
Utterly. Our default mode demands we instantly label every internal sensation: good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, desirable, undesirable.
Like immediately.
Instantly. But non-dual awareness starts to reveal that these distinctions, fear versus bliss, pleasure versus pain, joy versus sorrow, aren't inherent qualities of the energy itself.
They're labels we stick on afterward.
Exactly. They are mental constructs, interpretations, applied to the raw energy that arises in the body-mind system.
And the sources say that as the separate self, the ego, kind of loses its footing, its power to enforce these labels weakens.
That's when these intense experiences can happen. People report waves of what feels like intense fear, but simultaneously it's indistinguishable from waves of intense bliss.
Terror and ecstasy being the same thing.
Seen as two sides of the same coin, two expressions of the same underlying powerful raw energy moving through the system before the mind divides it into I want this or I don't want this.
That sounds incredibly radical. Is there any sort of external validation for this?
Actually, yes, and this is fascinating. There's psychological research, like studies by Mouse and colleagues back in 2005, that looked at physiological responses. They found the body often reacts very similarly to intensely positive and intensely negative stimuli.
Really? Like heart rate, breathing?
Exactly. Heart rate, respiration, skin conductance, the physical arousal markers could be almost identical. The big difference only showed up when people cognitively labeled the experience, this is wonderful, versus this is terrible.
Wow. So the body just generates this raw, intense energy.
And the mind jumps in like lightning and slaps a label on it. Good, more, or bad, stop.
But in non-dual awareness, the mind is quiet enough, or maybe just seen through enough, that it doesn't apply that label automatically.
Precisely. Or at least the label loses its power, its stickiness.
Right.
It allows for the direct, unmediated experience of the raw energy itself, whatever its flavor.
Okay, this is all starting to connect. If reality is actually unified on these levels, space, senses, emotions, what's keeping the illusion of separation going so strongly? What's the engine?
Well, we've touched on it already. It's the mind's constant, relentless activity. Labeling, categorizing, judging, interpreting.
It just happens automatically, right? So fast.
Incredibly fast. Usually before conscious awareness even kicks in fully, a sound happens and bam, it's labeled loud or soft, pleasant or annoying.
But how do you stop that? Can you even stop that initial label? Isn't that just how perception works?
That's the key point. You probably can't stop the initial basic categorization. That's part of the brain's function. The real issue, the engine of duality, isn't the label itself.
Get to what happens next.
Exactly. It's the immediate reinforcement through desire and aversion. Thought doesn't just label loud noise. It adds, and I don't like it. It shouldn't be happening. Or pleasant feeling. I want more.
Ah, the grasping and the resisting.
That's it. That habitual reaction, that liking and disliking, takes the raw, neutral data of experience and instantly weaves it into a personal story about me and what I want or don't want.
So it's our interpretations and our reactions, the pushing and pulling, that constantly reinforce the feeling of a separate me experiencing a separate world.
Perfectly put. The dualistic view gets locked in by this continuous cycle of preference and resistance, all driven by thought.
So the way out isn't necessarily stopping thought altogether, which sounds impossible anyway.
No, probably not. It's about recognizing this process in action, seeing how thought constructs the categories, and then immediately fuels our attachment to them. The desire, the aversion, seeing the mechanism is the crucial step.
Okay, so bringing this down to earth, what does this mean for just living? We still need to function, right? Drive the car, cook dinner, these things seem to require acknowledging separation.
Absolutely. This isn't about becoming non-functional or spaced out. It's about cultivating a deeper awareness alongside ordinary functioning.
How do we do that? Practically.
Well, the first step is often just simple, honest observation. Start noticing how your mind constantly creates space and location, how quickly ideas of me and mine pop up. Just watch it.
And with the senses, you mentioned sensory merging exercises.
Yeah, simple things like
Yeah.
maybe stand outside, intentionally listen to the sounds around you while also feeling the sensation of the air on your skin. Try to experience them not as separate inputs, but as one field. Don't analyze, just feel into it.
Letting the data streams merge, kind of.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, with emotions. When strong energy arises, excitement, anxiety, whatever, can you just feel the raw sensation in your body for a moment before the mind labels it good or bad and reacts?
Just allow the energy itself without the story.
Allow it to be just energy moving through without grabbing onto it or pushing it away immediately. Embrace the wave.
And the sources suggest that over time, with this kind of gentle, persistent awareness.
Yes, non-dual awareness can stabilize. It shifts from being maybe a fleeting glimpse or an interesting idea to becoming the recognized background of all experience.
So space, sound, emotion, they're still experienced, but they're seen differently.
They're seen as expressions of the unified whole rather than separate fragments happening to a separate self.
And the final kicker seems to be,
The final realization isn't that you have achieved some new state. It's the stunning recognition that reality was always like this. It was always unified, always whole.
the mind was just creating a very convincing overlay of separation.
Exactly. An incredibly compelling distraction, obscuring the truth that was already right here all along. We started thinking we were separate pieces, and we end up seeing the seamless whole.
That's quite a journey from feeling the solidity of a door handle to sensing the fluid, unified energy behind our own feelings.
It really is, and it brings up a fascinating point to ponder, especially linking back to that psychological research.
About the body's similar response to terror and ecstasy.
Right. If the raw physiological arousal is so similar, and the main difference we perceive comes down to cognitive labeling, basically, desire versus aversion, liking versus disliking, then what happens if that labeling process dissolves completely? What does that imply about the fundamental nature of what we call suffering? Is suffering maybe not an inherent quality of life itself, but perhaps a byproduct of our mental resistance and preferences?
Wow. That is definitely something to chew on, a really provocative question to end with.
Something to observe, perhaps.
Indeed. So we really encourage you as you go about your day-to-day, just gently notice your thoughts, the labels you apply, the little pushes and pulls of desire and aversion. See what you find.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.